the same breakfast could feel completely different depending on the day? What if your midlife metabolism had less to do with willpower and more to do with personalization? Welcome to the Science of Wellness. Today's guest is here to challenge the outdated health narratives many of us have grown up with. From micronutrients like iodine to menopause to metabolic flexibility, we're digging deep into how personalized nutrition can become the most powerful form of preventative medicine. Dr. Dorothea Portius is a nutrition scientist, researcher, and medical advisor who's bridging the gap between the lab bench and the kitchen table. Her work spans universities, clinical research, startups, and national advisory boards. And she's here today to talk about how to make nutrition science work for you. If you're passionate about longevity, women's health, or just tired of generic nutrition advice, this episode will leave you with tools, insights, and maybe even a shift in mindset. Welcome to the Science of Wellness, Dr. Dorothea.
Hello, Hannah. I'm so happy to be here, and I'm really excited about our talk. Yeah,
I am so glad you can join me for a conversation and just to share your knowledge. But before we dive in, I just want to remind everyone to subscribe to the Science of Wellness on YouTube or Spotify. It helps more listeners like you find the show and supports our mission of sharing science-backed strategies for living well. Now, let's dive straight in. So, Dorothea, what does wellness mean to you personally? And how has your definition evolved over time?
that is a pretty interesting question. So, me as a scientist, I'm a nerd, right? So, I love the science, and for me, every time needs to be science backed. But for wellness, actually, there is no real clear fixed definition, right? The definition highly depends on the individual feeling. So for me personally, it means to have a clear and calm mind. And even during a busy workday, nobody would tell that, well, it's wellness. But for me, certain days are kind of wellness because I experience moments of that. I feel grounded, calm, and highly content. And also interestingly, what you ask also in your question is the shift on the perspective of wellness, right? So I think also during my life, I mean, although I'm not that old yet, so I'm in the late 30s, scratching on the 40s, but still like certain life challenges, perspectives, our business life cycle, right, has led to changes in the way we think about wellness, right? Maybe made us stronger and also taught us how we manage stress more efficiently. And I definitely believe that certain life events can trigger a re-evaluation of what wellness means to us or to me. So, and for me personally, it's less about perfection. It's more about the inner balance and also emotional clarity. And I think it also evolved more like the last 5 to 10 years, so more in my 30s. So where I feel more grounded about this definition of wellness.
Yeah, it is surprising that everyone that comes into the 30s, everyone's perspective completely changes. Mine also changed completely. I was always very into high intensity workouts and almost like the hustle culture.
Exactly.
But
It's like
then
this
I just,
perfectionism, right? So
yes,
we follow a certain trend. We want to be perfect, or what means the definition of perfect. Right? And so, but then we realize, because I think in the 20s, like you said, right, we are trying everything out. I mean, I'm a nutrition expert. I think I tried out all nutrition trends, right? From vegan to intermittent fasting and to alternate day fasting and also a low carb diet and whatever. And it doesn't feel right? And I think in the 30s, we're becoming more relaxed about everything.
I love that you mentioned to be grounded and calm is important for you, and then to reevaluate. And I think reevaluating where we are and what wellness means to us, even if it is every 6 months, every 2 months, whatever works for you, that as long as you are feeling good in yourself, that is
Exactly.
what's important.
Exactly. And I think that's a major point, right? And nowadays in our society, when we're really hectic, we are stressed, we are rushing in the morning out of the house, we're coming late back in the evening, later night, also later evening back home. So, and there are a lot of tasks and to-dos, not only in business, but also in social life, right? And sometimes there's a really social pressure as well. So, and I think this reevaluation, it's really important to calm down the mind and also ask ourselves, or do that for me, like ask myself, which appointment, which to do adds a really benefit to my life, either in a professional term or also in a private social term. And I think that something has something to do also, I think, a bit with aging and the learning process. Yeah.
Yes, completely agree with that. Your research, it bridges science and everyday life. Now, what sparked your passion for nutrition as a tool for preventative medicine, especially in women's health?
Yeah, actually, that's pretty funny. So I need to go back really, really, so 30 years ago, or back 30 years. So because it all started with my grandmother. So together with my cousins, we grew up at my grandparents' place, or basically we spent most of time there. And my grandma picked us up from school, prepared lunch, and we often stayed overnight or on the weekends because our parents have been kind of busy. So, and she actually cooked what was in season, what was in the garden and on the fields. And when we ever got sick, she had this old book of Maria Treben. I don't know, do you know Maria Treben? Maria Treben is a Austrian, or was an Austrian herbalist, actually a pioneer in the traditional European plant remedies. So she pulled out her big book and looked, okay, which plants and herbs and remedies could help when we had some issues, some symptoms. And in particular, and that's why I love horseradish now. So when we got a cold, in particular during winter time, she freshly grated horseradish. So we were just crying and our nose was running because it was so spicy. Well, after that, one day after, so we were fine, right? And so, and she actually taught me that what is growing in our garden and the quality of food is really important. As well, my mom, she was really busy and traveling a lot for work, but for her, it was really important that the quality, what was on the table, was high. So, and this actually, these early influences actually planted the seeds for my interest in nutrition. And honestly, when I finished high school and I started studying, my purpose was to study medicine. But then I saw nutritional sciences as well. And then I was reevaluating and thinking, well, when I'm looking at the subjects, because everything medical part, and people don't know that, because my basic studies were just medicine. So we had all the subjects included: anatomy, biochemistry, physiology. But what sparked me in nutritional science was also some parts of agriculture and also the whole human nutrition and plant sciences. And I think that's actually an interesting combination. And so by curiosity or maybe coincidence, I made seemingly the right decision. So I studied nutrition and science, and that it went further, right? And for the aspects of fem health, you ask? Well, it started during my PhD. Although I was not interested yet, so mainly deep in fem health, because we didn't get taught that. We knew that the metabolism is different between male and female, but we didn't get it taught during studies. And during my PhD, I was working on a project regarding fatty liver diseases, also metabolic associated fatty liver diseases and the interorgan crosstalk. I created some knockout mice. Conducting the experiments, I sorted out all the male mice. But I never really questioned why. I knew why, because female mice have been protected due to the estrogen to develop steatosis. And also the analysis for lipid and carbohydrate metabolism was much more complicated. Then back in Germany, and I started the position in the corporate state university in Heilbronn and a team of personalized nutrition. Our goal is now, right, we are studying now the female metabolism. We are interested in creating personalized nutrition advices for women in menopause, particularly. In this context, it started that I was reading also a lot and got into this topic. And for me, it's fascinating. Also a female myself. And also as I listening to my body, I mean, I even realized myself, right, that my needs are completely different in the follicular phase versus the luteal phase. And also the needs might be also different if I'm currently having a stressful period versus if I have a relaxed period. And that actually started to work more on this topic and also support companies working on this subject.
That is very interesting. And I actually had a conversation a while back with someone that also worked with mice in their PhD, but they didn't use any results that came from female mice. So they just threw it out because it made their results more complicated and they didn't, at that point, didn't know how to explain it.
Exactly.
So I'm so glad you still had it in, and that actually gave you this new field to go into. That's very interesting.
Well, yeah, we didn't edit the data from the female mice into the male mice. We just used the male mice for publication. But well, it was interesting to see that those female mice didn't behaved or didn't had these alterations in metabolism like the male mice, right?
That's very interesting. And yeah, I keep now when I read a study, if it's for fatty liver or it's for anything else, then I keep going to what did the cohort look like? Was it male, female? Was it just male? Was it just a certain age? And I always looked at what the cohort was like. But I think we are so used to just seeing males specimens, I want to say specimens, in any study that now, as soon as a female is also included, it's very exciting to me.
Exactly. I think as well, in particular, also I had a discussion also last week, because when we're going to the doctor and we have a disease or we're going to a nutrition therapist, a counselor, who is asked, which kind of cycle phase are you in? No one. No one. Nobody is respecting that. And I think we just starting to understand that, right? And just starting to understand what might be the difference, not only in food reaction, but also maybe in medical reaction, responses, or other terms, right? And it's really fascinating. I think the next years will bring us much more insights into that metabolism and it is those differences. Yeah.
I'm very excited for it. So, Dorothea, you've spoken about how the same breakfast can feel different every day. And that I've personally experienced. What does it teach us about personalization, and what signs should people watch for in their daily meals?
Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting because I also experience it myself, right? And actually, it means a lot, right? Because our responses to food or nutrients can vary significantly depending on the context, right? Either it's the lifestyle, physical activity, it's stress level, hormonal fluctuations, we just talked about it, sleep, circadian rhythm, or even the season, right? And it's pretty interesting that even with the season, our gut microbiome is shifting. So, and that might potentially also influence how we digest or absorb nutrients and how nutrients or food affects actually our mood, metabolism, and even the immune system, right? And as I told you before, my grandmother, she tried every time to cook seasonally. And I think it's interesting to, if we have seasons, I mean, there are some regions in the world that don't really experience seasons, but if we eat the food which is locally and seasonally produced, it tells you directly what your body needs. In summer now, I mean, in Germany now we have summer, it's full with berries, cucumbers, tomatoes, vegetables and fruits, which are really high with a high water content, a lot of polyphenols, which give us actually this lightness in the summer, a lot of water as well, and the polyphenols, which might us even protect from UVB exposure. In wintertime, and also my grandma, she was used to cook a lot of soups and stews with red meat, and starchy vegetables, which deliver us with complex carbohydrates, the meat with iron, which is really important to keep us warm and also cover our iron needs, to sustain our energy levels, to keep the body core temperature in wintertime. And I think that's pretty interesting when we are just thinking about it. And I was writing already 3 books. In the main 2 books, I also suggested some recipes in the end, but they were divided by season because I think we need to respect what the nature is giving us, because that also tells you what your body during that season yeah, it needs in the end.
Everyone knows, or they know of, you should eat seasonally, but now that you started to explain why it is with the water content and the complex carbs, it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, I think so as well, right? And also I think the microbiome, we also need to respect it, also from the cultural perspective. I think there are now several studies out there, right, showing also us Europeans, we don't have the right microbes to digest, for instance, seaweed, right? I mean, just yesterday night I was at the sushi course. So my best friend, she has a sushi restaurant here in Leipzig, and she made a sushi course, and I I went there and I love sushi a lot, right? But every time I'm thinking, did my microbiome actually already adapt it because I eat a lot of sushi or not? And so also these cultural influences, right? And that's actually the fingerprint we get from our microbiome perspective, right? And it determines how well we digest certain food components. And of course, if we are moving or going in other countries and other eating other food, other compositions, we might not be able to absorb it in the right way or digest it in the right way. So, and I think that it's also a pretty interesting aspect. We just also starting to understand. And if we indeed get an adaptation to that, and how long does this adaptation take, right?
I find the microbiome extremely interesting, and I'm doing a lot of research now, but just for the fun of it, about the gut brain axis, just to see
Yeah.
what is happening. And yeah, so that was the first few things that I started posting on LinkedIn more than a year ago, and I think that is actually how we got to know each other,
Yeah,
is through one
exactly.
of those posts.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's fascinating. I think it's not just our body, but just also the those microbes. And I'm not just speaking about bacteria, right? There are yeast, there are viruses, and other microbes, right? On us, which have such a huge impact on our health and our mood. And it's fascinating. And it's really fascinating to dive into those topics. I mean, currently, I'm also studying this crosstalk between the skin microbiome and vitamin D metabolism. So, and it might be also that these microbes have an influence on not only the how much vitamin D we are producing, but also in its activation. And it shows again, right, that we are living in a shared apartment together with some with some microbes, and that the way we eat and live determines which kind of microbes, right, living on us. So and it's really important to keep that in mind. Yeah.
Yes, I listened to a talk, I think last week, and the speaker said we are never truly alone.
Yeah, that's true. That's really true. Yeah.
So, Dorothea, in your view, what's one outdated nutrition myth that still lingers in menopause conversations? And I think there's a lot. So, what do you think should replace it?
Yeah. So I'm currently also on the side giving nutritional counseling in a private clinic in Berlin. It's a clinic specified for fem health. And what shocks me every time, this female coming in with their problems and also weight problems, and every time, well, my metabolism slows down, I need to cut off calories. No, these low carb and low caloric diets are completely wrong. So, and I think here it needs to be more education, because the truth is your body needs nutrients and not just your calories, right? And with nutrients also mean not only the micronutrients. We all know that they're important. And I think in particular, females going through menopause, right? They love supplements. Oh my God, there is a new trend. I need to buy this multivitamin. But I think what is not kept in mind that these macronutrients, right? Complex carbohydrates as well as protein are really essential. So not only the protein, we know with aging, of course, like we are losing more muscle mass, and particular, right, the age-related muscle loss sarcopenia is an issue, and it's also accelerated due to the declining estrogen levels. So I think, of course, the focus needs to be protein, but it doesn't mean that you need to stock up on protein powders. It just means choose the right quality protein, right? And the other thing is the carbohydrates. I think that's it's still so shocking for me that everyone thinks, oh my God, I need to lose weight. I need to cut down the carbohydrates. No, because if you cut them down, you will slow down your metabolic rate. And what's the issue, the problem for most of the females going through menopause. So it's just picking the right carbohydrates, right? The complex carbohydrate. And it's just about also the smart fueling. Where are those complex carbohydrates in, and how you can put it into your meals, in particular on which time, right? We also know now that adding more the carbohydrates in the mornings, in the breakfast, in the lunch, and less carbohydrates in the dinners. So it will also improve your metabolic rate, but also will improve the carbohydrate metabolism, right? Insulin sensitivity. And I think, in this way, more education and the right education is highly needed. And also not only for females, but also for whole society.
I'm so glad you mentioned the carbohydrates because that was one of the diets that I went full on in my 20s. And every time, yes, you do lose weight. And I lost a lot of weight. But then, as soon as I start eating normally again, then I immediately pick it up. So it was to learn about that balance and to what you said about eating more carbs in the mornings and afternoons and then less in the evenings. And also, I sleep better when I eat like that.
Exactly. It has really something to do also with our insulin sensitivity and also the metabolic rate, because in the morning we have a high cortisol level, which is important because in that way we are coming out of bed and we get the first energy kick. And cortisol also triggers actually the release of glucose because we need the first energy kick in the morning. Our cells need this energy to get starting, the machinery is running, and this slows down because cortisol is decreasing during the day, get a small peak during lunchtime and the midday, and then goes down. And vice versa, melatonin sparks up in the evening, right? And preparing us for sleep and also preparing our metabolism for kind of sleep. So it slows everything down. So the metabolic rate is decreasing. Of course, why should a cell still working? Because actually melatonin also prepares during the night. The night is a starvation window, physiological. And what we are doing during a starvation window, we are cleaning up, right? The cells starting their autophagic processes. So autophagy, a big word in longevity. So and during night, this is happening. So the cells cleaning themselves up, what gets accumulating during the day while they were metabolizing carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. So and get the reset button to start over the next day. And I think keeping that in mind is important. But another interesting aspect I want to mention, because all those studies showing that, right, to eating like that is more beneficial also for insulin sensitivity and if you want to lose weight. But I was one conference and there was someone presented such a study and it was really cool how many the weight loss of the participants. But one guy, I think he was also from a Mediterranean country, and said, well, but we are eating really late dinners, right? And really heavy dinners. And also one of my best friend, he's from South Italy. And sometimes he was eating at 10 p.m. a big pasta dish. And I was like, oh my goodness. I think also then we need also again here respecting maybe some cultural influences, right? And how you grow up. It's also this epigenetics. And I think there is much more to discover about that what we currently don't know. But currently, and also what I'm advising my females I'm counseling is like, don't forget the macronutrients. Put your complex carbohydrates in the mornings. If you have weight issues, restrict yourself on carbs in the evening, and usually that works pretty well. And the metabolic rate is still efficiently.
I just want to ask you about, because now you explained about the cortisol going up and down throughout the day and with the complex carbs in the morning. So, women that are experiencing menopause, do you think it is beneficial for them to do these fasting periods and, for example, where you fast for a few days at once?
That's a tricky question, right? And that's currently what we are trying to understand also in my university at the Corporate State University in Heilbronn. And with our maneuver study, we try to get this connection. We want to understand how menopause symptoms, diet interact and also with the quality of life. And for that, we're using wearable data from a Fitbit. So from that, we're getting sleep, and physical activity, heart rate activity. And then we are using AI to uncover individual patterns to give personalized nutritional guidance. So far, we don't know because we also know that the menopause transition, this period is so individual and also the time frame, the symptoms. So that's why it's so hard to give really recommendations to that. And I think here we need to look on the individuum, on the woman, on this one woman to respect her individual lifestyle, her individual dietary pattern, her cultural aspects to give these recommendations. And just thinking also regarding the fasting, what you just mentioned, right? We know that fasting, in particular for females still in the cycle, that in the luteal phase, it's really counterproductive because the luteal phase, the body experiences or has a lower stress threshold. So fasting is stress for the body, right? And if you fast in the second time of your cycle or the second period of your cycle, it might end up with metabolic changes. It might also end up that your metabolic rate is slowing down. And even some females experience irregularities in her cycle. So because in the second phase of the cycle, the body is preparing for pregnancy. And of course, body needs all the nutrients, right? Which gets in and don't want to lose and is say, okay, if there is stress, I'm not able to grow up a fetus, right? So, and that's interesting aspects. And for menopause, in particular, the transition, we don't know yet what might be the right thing, right, to recommend.
I just want to stay on the Menuva study that you are involved in. You've mentioned about the fasting that you are not sure yet and looking at a more personalized aspect for any interventions or how you treat each woman. Now, what have you uncovered so far and how do you see this research changing clinical practice? I really hope it changes clinical practice.
Yeah, me too. So we have actually the long term for Menuva aims to generate evidence-based personalized nutrition guidance or guidelines for midlife women, but currently don't have any data yet. So the study just started, is ongoing. It's an 8-week trial. So we incorporate over 200 females and getting data from food logs, symptom logs, quality of life, as well as data from the Fitbit. So that is our first pilot study. So of course, we are planning next studies where we also might incorporate some biomarkers from the buccal swab, like proteomics or even blood biomarkers, to get more data into it. So Menuva in the end is like, we would like to transform the clinical practice we currently have, right? So through the integration of biometrics, wearables, and dietary records. That's why we would like to shift from generic menopause advice, because so far there is not a real advice or not standardized nutritional guidances. And we would like to form individualized dietary prescriptions. And so to optimize actually the well-being of the females.
Well, if you ever need someone from South Africa, feel free to contact me.
I will do. So currently it's just Germany, but I hope at one point we will spread it all over.
I've seen your content on LinkedIn is always so informative. And on one of the posts, you spoke about iodine, and that is a micronutrient that you've called the forgotten regulator. Now, why is that so important, and who's most at risk of missing out?
That's a good question, because let's go one step back, because we know we need micronutrients, and some micronutrients, they're every time on the top, right? Vitamin D, iron, and so on, the classics. But there are some nutrients like iodine or even selenium, which get really forgotten. And currently I'm working on a report for a bigger NGO or organization. And I got back to these topics about micronutrients and fortification and the iodine topic. So I didn't thought about that because we are living in Europe. We are having all the food available. Basically, we don't suffer from deficiencies. But if you're looking on these new data and also the latest report of the World Health Organization, it shows clearly we have a strong decline in iodine levels in Europe, that thyroid issues are coming back. And we completely forgot about that because in former times, you saw also when my grandparents told me about that, right? You see the people with the thyroid gland like on the throat gets bigger, right? The crop, and you don't see that anymore. That's why we are not facing this issue directly. Right? And it is these silent deficiencies, in particular also for iodine, because iodine, of course, it's important for our thyroid hormones, but people don't know that these thyroid hormones are regulating so many things in our organism, right? they're important also for fertility, for the mood, for body temperature, for the heart rate, everything. They are keeping up our metabolism. Then when someone is tired or has a bad mood, maybe it's iodine. Some people completely forget about that. And that's why I call it the forgotten regulator. And so I think there needs to be more knowledge transmission. And we see that populations at risk are in particular women again, in particular women of reproductive age, because iodine, the thyroid hormones, are important for fetal growth, in particular brain development and cognitive health. And again, also the pregnant woman and as well as breastfeeding women are also mainly at risk. But also we see it more and more people following a plant-based diet. So, and people following a clean eating diet, because when you're looking at the also produced foods nowadays, at the salt, also in the organic stores, it's like organic sea salt. But there's no iodine in it because formerly, to prevent deficiencies, iodine got added to our salt to prevent thyroid issues. But also nowadays, producers are not adding iodinized salt anymore because people go opting out for clean labels and everything what is fortified. Say, okay, no, I don't want to have this in my cupboard. And in addition, if you use iodized salt at home, it will barely add on because this bit of salt will not do anything or improve a lot of in your body, right? Add on in your metabolism or in your stores, because mainly we're eating a lot of produced food, like looking at bread, yogurt, where iodine usually also get added through to the salt, which got included in the bread, or in the cow food where iodine is added, where you have the iodine, also the salt stones where the cows can lick on. So there we find usually iodine. But mainly producers also not using any more iodized salt, either to labeling issues or to, like cost, to be more cost effective. And there are many, many reasons. And I think we need to keep this in mind, right? That iodine is important, and we should not forget this small micronutrient, which has a high influence on our metabolism and our health overall.
But why has iodine then gotten such bad rep? Because if it is involved in so many different aspects, then why have we cut it out to start with?
Yeah, I can't tell you really. No, I mean, if you're looking at the salt, right, going in the supermarket, looking at all these different salts, the mainly salts are just labeled like healthy natural sea salt, salt from the Himalayas, and it's not iodized, right? But it has this clean and natural label where most people opting out for, and that's the issue because also in Europe, mainly we have voluntary fortification. So of course the industry going for that, what the consumer wants. And we see as a good example Switzerland. Switzerland is one of those countries in Europe who still have mandatory fortification, and they don't have, or there we don't see a decrease in iodine status in the population. But the people are not aware. So, and last month, I was in Switzerland visiting some friends, and due to now my current project or report, I was looking at all the foods, right? And it was indeed written everywhere, or almost everywhere, iodized salt, iodized salt, iodized salt. And I asked my friend, do you know that your salt is iodized everywhere? She said, oh, really? I didn't look at that. So, and it makes a big difference, right? And so I think either there needs to be changes in regulatory aspects, or the consumer needs to be more educated, or the industry needs to get more on board, right, to really get forced to use iodized salt. And the governments need to put some better incentives in place to support industry that they use iodized salt, right?
We often hear about chronic diseases that are in isolation, but your recent writing emphasizes multimorbidity. Why is it time to rethink how we approach chronic illnesses and nutrition together?
Well, because everything is intertwined and connected. So that's also, I told you my PhD, I was looking at this inter-organ crosstalk, and it's just not simple one factor. It's not one tissue. It's everything is connected. And we need to approach also our, let's say, non-communicable diseases or NCDs in a more holistic way. It starts by even a skin disease, right? If you have eczema, just have a close look in the gut, like on the microbiome. Which food are you incorporating? Look at the metabolic rate if a female has weight issues, right? And she almost eats. I see a lot of females coming into the clinic and having their dietary protocol, and it's so low caloric, and but they have so much weight issues. So we need to look, okay, which energy comes in. So what are the hormonal status, right? In particular, if a female has problems with hair loss. So, and then they're crapping for multivitamins, looking at other supplements. But at first, check the hormonal level, right? It might be due to that. So I think we need to cooperate more. Also, GPs, other health practitioners needs to cooperate in a much better way. So we need to share patient data and to get this collaborative approach, like this holistic approach, and these different sites from different experts and from different knowledge bases. Yeah.
You've also advised both startups and established companies. Now, when you look at their products, what makes a product or a health app truly science backed? And then also, what is a red flag that you often spot?
That's a really good question. I mean, you and me, we are both on social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, and it really, I mean, I get really every time shocked when I see people which are no scientists, studied health practitioners, say, proposing a health app or a supplement and have no clue about it, have no clue about the physiology, how it gets absorbed for when we're speaking about supplements, if we're speaking about a health app, why certain data is acquired. And now also with AI, they thinking, well, I can simply ask the AI for literature, but they are not double checking what is actually written in this scientific article. Or, like you said, we talked before that, right? Looking which participant have been included. Was it all male or just females? And that are some aspects I found really shocking, that people who are not studied in that topics, which are not have not a lot of knowledge about it, think they can speak out. And that's for me actually the most red flag. And for supplements, because I'm working also with a lot of supplement startups and companies together, developing some supplements, but also a lot of companies contacting me. And for me, every time the thing is, I'm looking at the products they have and ask them why you choose to put all these micronutrients or those plant substances in this product. And then you realize, yeah, so it's mainly a multivitamin cocktail. And then when you look further and looking at the biochemistry, for instance, magnesium, there are so many magnesiums form out there, but they barely don't know which form is better bioavailable, which form that has which function, and also when those products needs to be best taken in, right? Is it with a meal? Is it in the morning? Like vitamins, I would every time recommend in the morning, or is it in the late evening? Is it before bed? And I think that's really a red flag. And there, of course, needs to be much more education and people like you and me out there advising companies with the biochemistry background, the clinical context, and also don't forget this personalization we just talked about, right? Also giving feedback on the target group they would like to reach. So we have this difference in male and female and even children, right? So that's something we definitely need to respect.
Yes, I am glad you mentioned about some of the supplement companies, and I'm saying some because not all of them are the same, and that they do have individuals marketing it and they don't know what they are marketing. But that is even not just with the supplement companies, that is across the health and wellness space now. And I've been working with some companies that as soon as you start working with the marketing individuals, you immediately know that they don't have the science basis, which it can harm in the long term and harm the company as well. So it's a good idea to get people like you and me on to help them.
Exactly, exactly. No, it's really important because there are good products out there, right?
Yes.
And so those products, they need a support that also get to the customer, and that the customer get educated, and that also it's not just about wellness or fancy wellness words on the label, right? It's more about the science which needs to be transported to the consumer.
Yes, yes. Now, here in South Africa, there's a lot of, as soon as you buy supplements, there's a few supplements that you can actually see that it has been tested or there's some clinical studies behind it. But most of them says that this product has not been verified by SAHPRA, which is our regulatory authority.
Yeah.
And it's still on the shelves. You find it in one of the biggest pharmacy chains. And, well, you keep on buying it because, well, it's there
Yeah, yeah.
and you can't get others. So it's better to have something than nothing.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. But yeah, I think anyway, we both can do our best, right, to educate the people and to give our knowledge to the outside.
You keep on mentioning personalized nutrition, and now I want you to just talk about precision nutrition because this sounds very futuristic, but it isn't because it's already here and we are already using it. And what are the biggest opportunities and limitations that you see in making it accessible to everyone?
Mm, absolutely. Precision nutrition is no longer actually a futuristic concept, like you mentioned. I hope that it will become a reality, right? Because we see major advances with the corporate state university, the personalized nutrition team. We are working on those advances using wearable data and also gut microbiome testing, nutrigenomics, real-time tracking of metabolic responses. I think that sensor technology is a big add-on, and the sensitivity of those sensors is increasing. And I think that are the biggest opportunities we have currently, but we need to connect them, right? It's not just the microbiome, it's not just the glucose response. So I think in the future we need to use the opportunity of those advances to combine them in a much better way to get highly or truly personalized recommendations, right? And also thanks to the wearable data, right? We're getting insights into someone's biology, lifestyle, and also daily behaviors in real time. And that's also what we are testing currently with the Menuva study, right? What this knowledge, this data will tell us, right? How we can incorporate it or how we can use those readouts to connect it with the food that the person is eating. It's a really a high opportunity for the future, and especially to guide not only females and women, but also men. I see children, I see older people with maybe sarcopenia, people in oncology, right? Because currently having also ongoing project regarding personalized nutrition in oncology. That are all perspectives we can use those data. But with these responsibilities, right, and with these promises comes also this highly responsibility. So we have also, of course, things we need to respect, and that's one thing. And I think that's one major challenge is the data interpretation. So if we are currently looking, I don't know if you have a wearable. I currently have a wearable Fitbit we are using for our Menuva study, and I'm testing it actually. The consumer, me, I'm getting data. So, but this data is not interpreted, right? So it tells you, well, you walked that long, your heart rate is that, you might have burned so much calories, but it's not detailed, and it don't connect those data with maybe with your dietary log or with your quality of life or with your other health issues you have. And I think those data interpretation, there we need to be more careful currently. And those data interpretation needs to be done from people who has the experience and can put everything in one context to give personalized recommendations.
Yes, now that you mentioned it's everything that needs to come in to understand your wearable data as well. Um, there's actually a paper about the exposome, and that refers
Yeah.
to the totality of the environmental exposures that a person experiences throughout life from conception to death. And that is very interesting, and it is an exciting new concept that the longevity field is actually diving into.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there are so many things we need to respect, right? When we're speaking about personalization. But on first hand, I mean, that's also something very interesting. We just spoke about that in the beginning, right? Self reflection. How do I feel? Never trust any data which your wearable tells you or your sensor is telling you, but how do you feel, right? And I was listening once to a cast with the German triathlete. I forgot his name. He was winning the Ironman in Hawaii, and he was telling something like that, right? That also, of course, he used wearable data for training and so on, but one time it didn't work. So his wearable. So and then he was like, "Oh my God, how is my heart rate?" And then he needed to think, but wait, I need to listen to my body, right? What my body is telling me. And I think we should be aware that we are not losing the control or the feeling of our own body. And I think just listening to the body will tell us everything, right? What we need. If we don't run in the morning, or maybe we should sleep half an hour longer, or if we need now the porridge to breakfast, or maybe it's better today to have the yogurt with banana or nuts, and just listening what your body tells you. And I think that's the most important thing. Yeah.
With that, I have one last question for you.
Yeah.
So, if listeners could take just one small action today to future proof their nutrition, what would you recommend?
That's actually simple because, in short, quality over quantity. It doesn't need to be a lot. Just choose the quality, the food you eat. Look for high quality proteins, particularly the meat and animal products, and eat seasonal, colorful, and don't count macros and calories. Just be aware of the quality and of the nature of your food items which are on your plate.
I think you're ruffling a few feathers with the don't count the macros.
But it's every time that way, right? Because I mean, I'm every time shocked because when you're looking at nuts, right, for walnuts, of course they have a lot of calorie content, right? They're high in fat, but there are even interesting studies showing when people with overweight eating each day 2 hands of nuts, they don't gain weight, right? Even the cardiometabolic profile is improving. And so it shows you also that more the quality counts than actually the calorie content. Yeah.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
But Dorothea, with that, that's a wrap on today's conversation. And what a conversation it was. From redefining metabolic health to breaking down menopause myths, Dr. Portius reminded us that nutrition is not a one size fits all, especially not in midlife and beyond, and especially not if you are a female. So, do you have any final thoughts that you would like to share?
Just listen to your body, reflect yourself, and look sometimes a bit better what is on your plate and enjoy the food you eat. Yeah. And
Yes,
thank you so much, Hannah, for the invitation. It was a pleasure to be here. And I think we have so many topics, and I would be happy to come a second time and talk
oh,
with you.
definitely. Yes. Yes, there's a few things I would love to cover with you, especially the microbiome.
Yeah, we definitely need to do that.
Great. But thank you so much for joining me today. If you found today's episode helpful, please share it with a friend who needs this message too. And if you haven't already, tap follow or subscribe so you don't miss future episodes on longevity, wellness, and the science behind it all. You can find all of Dr. Dorothea's links, including where to reach out and learn more about her work, in the episode description. Thanks for listening to The Science of Wellness. I'm your host, Dr. Hannah de Wit, and I'll see you next time.